Have you heard the saying, when France sneezes, the rest of Europe catches a cold? That famous line came from Austrian Chancellor Metternich, just after the July Revolution of 1830 in France. The French people had done the unthinkable. They rose up and overthrew their king. But the revolution didn't stop at the French border. Belgium broke away from the Netherlands. Uprisings flared in Italy, Germany, Poland, and even the Balkans. And the rebels? They weren't just soldiers, they were artists, students, workers, and thinkers, all dreaming of freedom and a new kind of nation. So what made this period so explosive? Welcome to the age of revolutions, where ideas turn into movements and movements into history. Let's pause the revolutions and look at something quieter but just as powerful. Culture. In the 19th century, a group known as the Romantics, poets, artists, and musicians, believed that emotions, traditions, and shared memories shaped the nation more deeply than laws or borders. They asked, what makes people feel like a nation, even without a flag? Johann Gottfried Herder, a German philosopher, believed the soul of a nation, or Volksgeist, lived in folk songs, poetry, and dance passed down through generations. In Germany, the Grimm brothers collected fairy tales not just for children, but to preserve German identity. In Poland, after the country vanished from maps, it survived in music, language, and church rituals, especially under Russian rule. Think about it, a national anthem, a local dance, even a festival, these aren't just traditions. They're what connect you to something bigger. For the Romantics, culture wasn't just celebration, it was resistance and a quiet revolution of its own. Nationalism wasn't just born out of poetry and pride. It was also forged in the fire of economic pain. The 1830s and 1840s were brutally difficult years across Europe. Poor harvests pushed food prices up, leaving the poor hungry. Local weavers and artisans were crushed by cheap, factory-made goods from industrial Britain. Cities were overcrowded, jobs were few, and living conditions worsened by the day. Let's zoom in on a powerful moment, the Silesian weavers' uprising of 1845. In this village economy, cotton weaving was the main livelihood. But as contractors slashed wages, despair turned into defiance. On 4th June, thousands of weavers marched peacefully, demanding fair pay. They were mocked. So they retaliated, storming the contractor's mansion, tearing apart his goods, and destroying what symbolized their suffering. The state's response? The army opened fire. 11 weavers were killed. This wasn't just a fight for better wages. It was a cry for dignity, justice, and survival. Here's your takeaway. When economic injustice meets political silence, what follows is no longer protest, it's revolution. While workers fought for survival, a parallel revolution was rising, this time from the liberal middle class. Who were they? Lawyers, teachers, doctors, journalists, and businessmen, people who believed in rational reform, individual rights, and the power of the written constitution. In May 1848, over 800 elected representatives gathered in Frankfurt's street. Paul's church to draft a constitution for a unified German nation. Their vision? A nation ruled not by divine right, but by a monarch who respected constitutional law. But when they offered the crown to King Friedrich Wilhelm IV of Prussia, he famously refused, calling it a crown from the gutter. The military and monarchy regained control. The revolution collapsed. Yet the dream didn't die. The Frankfurt Assembly proved that nationalism was no longer just a fantasy, it was a public demand. Even in failure, 1848 lit the path for the idea that nations should be built by the will of the people, not by empires. So, what really set Europe ablaze between 1830 and 1848 Cultural revival, artists, poets, and musicians reignited national pride through language and heritage. Economic misery, rising food prices, factory closures, and joblessness pushed the masses to the brink. Liberal demands, the middle class wanted constitutions, press freedom, and parliaments, not royal decrees. Government denial, monarchs refused to adapt, and that refusal lit the fuse. Let's frame it like a formula: Romanticism plus hardship plus liberalism minus listening equals revolution. When you mix culture, crisis, and political pressure, and leaders still refuse to listen, the result is always resistance. The age of revolutions wasn't just about politics, it was about people daring to believe that they deserved more. An artist with a pen, a peasant with a sickle, a student with a pamphlet, each played their part in shaping the dream of freedom, dignity, and nationhood. True, many of these revolutions didn't succeed overnight, but they planted the seeds of something bigger: the ideas of modern democracy, national identity, and citizen power that still define the world today. And this is just the beginning. In our next video, we'll see how these revolutionary ideals helped build the United Nations, Germany, and Italy. Stay curious, because history isn't just what happened, it's what continues to shape